All right, so here we go. So one of the very first things I wanted you guys to become introduced to is this whole idea of breath. You know, we've been breathing all of our lives, and it's amazing that people pay such an incredible amount of money to learn how to breathe, but that's the yoga industry we're in. And I got to tell you, there's an old quote that said, success is to know that one life has breathed easier because you've existed. And, you know, it all comes down to breath, you guys. And it's one of the first things that we went over, the first reading, the science of breath. And I really want to make sure that you guys go back to the science of breath, read it again, now that you have a little bit more context. We basically only worked with Ujjayi breathing. We worked with prana and apana, and we did a little bit of retention, not much. But the breath, the force of life, is the single most important thing that I want you guys to remember from this weekend. And I think all of you expressed that you experienced that shift in your breath. Now, if you remember the inhale, real basic stuff here, guys, but I think as yoga teachers, you have to know what inhale is. Inhaling is prana, like prana vayu. And the exhale is apana. If you recall, the prana is like spring and summer, expanding and blossoming like the big tree of life. And the exhale, it's the process of moving from fall into winter. And it's constantly moving. So, if you recall, there's three-part breathing. When I was lying down and demonstrating with you guys, the belly breathing. Now, we're really not breathing into the belly, right? The belly, the stomach itself does not take air. However, when the diaphragm expands, it shows up in that region. And when the breath is very happy, it's deep. When the breath is uninhibited, when the breath is flowing, it begins deep in the belly. And when I demonstrated it, you guys experienced it. If you remember, I called it the second gear. It's where the rib cage would expand. Now, it's important to remember the word cage implies something fixed, but the rib cage itself is not fixed at all. In between your ribs, you've got muscles and ligaments and tendons. So that whole region wants to increase in its flexibility. It wants to increase in its pliability, and you want your breath to move latitudinally on that second gear. Now, if you recall, the swirling up and underneath the pecs, the pectoralis, the chest muscles, up and underneath the pits of your arms and into the collarbones, that would be where the final breath would be. And at the top of that, you simply breathe it out. And if you remember then, the first place the breath moves out is the way it came in, from the belly. The belly draws back, the ribs contract inwards, and that last little bit of breath leaves under the collarbones.